Peace, God.
Peace, God.
So yeah, introduce yourself.
General Bashek Jebar, the teacher of law in the heart of Medina.
Indeed, God. So God, you were born in this nation,
Yes.
right? So can you just give me like a little bit of your history in terms of like, you know, of course you were born, but then growing up in the nation and how you saw it as a child, and then your siblings and all that, and your experience.
Good. All right, that's peace. That's peace. I started studying. I picked up Supreme Mathematics from alphabet. Started studying for myself at the age of 12 in 1994. I was resting in Pilon with my old dad. But just to give you my family tree or my family root, it goes from the father-in-law toward the first nine born from Mecca, of ABG7 to a firstborn Shah from Medina, firstborn Shah from Medina to his physical Basim, his physical Basim to my old dad Bashik. My old dad taught me and my siblings and my family.
Okay.
So that's my root. But we've always been introduced to the culture since before I was born. My family has been involved. My old dad had knowledge since he was about 14, 15 years old. So most of my family was involved in the culture in some form or fashion, as well as pretty much most of the people I grew up around in my neighborhood. A lot of them received knowledge from my old dad. So I always had the culture as an influence to me growing up. Even in my household, the language spoken was Supreme Mathematics, Supreme Alphabets, and I heard degrees all the time. You know, my oldest sister, she could quote the Supreme Mathematics at the age of understanding at 3 years old. But what my old dad did with me and my physicals, he allowed us to pick it up whenever we decided to do it on our own. So my direct lineage of me studying came from 1994. I was in 7th grade, I learned Supreme Mathematics, Supreme Alphabets, 12 Jews of Islam, and then 1 to 10 while I was in 7th grade. And then I started defining each word in the 1 to 10. And all this wasn't even my old dad telling me, I just had a natural inclination to study.
But it was already in the household.
It was already in the household, yes.
Right, with your old dad and your old herbs as well.
Yes, yeah, both of them.
Okay.
And my uncles, like everybody who visited pretty much spoke our language. Or was somehow, they was part of the culture some way or another.
So what was the attraction in 1994?
It was the language, like seeing a lot of my uncles and my aunts, just seeing the dynamics of how they interacted. At that age, you're still young, so you're able to detect certain social cues and things like that. But I noticed that the people that my old dad and my old earth would be around, I noticed a certain bond. I learned a certain I seen a certain connection that connected them. So I liked the way that they was connected, how it was unified, how I could wake up, you know what I mean? I got some uncles there visiting from another state and they building with me, so it was like that excited.
Okay. So, how long did it take you like to knowledge 120 from that point, from 1994?
To about 2001, about 2001, I was about 19 years old.
6-7 years?
Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of took your time going through it though.
Yes, yeah.
And what was that experience like, those 7 years?
It was definitely a good experience. I definitely needed it. Although I could quote a lot of the degrees, even at a very young age, my age level and my experience level didn't necessarily match to the level of knowledge that I had at the time. So going through those years allowed me to have experience with my peers, experience with older people, younger people, experiences teaching, finding things that worked, that didn't work. So those years were very vital in my growth and development.
I mean, did you have peers that were a part of the culture as well?
Yes.
Yeah, and was that like a support system?
Yes, that was definitely a support system. We had peers growing up where I grew up at in Medina. A lot of the generation ahead of us, they had knowledge of self in some form of fashion, or at some point they were actively studying. So the children and nephews, we all pretty much had a grasp of what knowledge of self was, and somehow we kind of formed similar units as like our fathers and uncles kind of was together. It just naturally, as we grew up, we kind of molded together, and we all started studying. We all started studying at different times, but by the time we was all 15, 16, 17, we was all studying 120, and some of us got it faster than others, but we had a peer group, and we was all pretty much within 2 to 3 years of the same age range. Then we had our older brothers and sisters who lived inside the neighborhood, who would build with us, spend time with us, sit down and build with us, and give us their experiences.
So what were some of the challenges during those years?
Just in general?
Yeah, like the challenges in terms of like the culture, because I know like the 90s, and since you said 1994, because that's when I started walking through 120 lessons, right? Or officially started being introduced to the cultures in 1994. But during that time, you know, there was a large influx of 5%ers, but then there was the counterculture, like the Bloods and the Crips started coming around the times. I mean, so. And I think I want to say I'm probably years older than you, right? So
what's your physical degree again?
I'm free God.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So you know, so at that time I was knowledge equality.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So you know, you being
knowledge wisdom,
knowledge wisdom, right. So yeah, like that time period, I could see like, you know, the Bloods, the Crips, and being a teenager at that time, it was like, okay, you know, you kind of had to stand on your square. You know what I'm saying? So, but I wonder what your experience was as a young man at knowledge wisdom.
It was almost like we didn't fully understand what was going on, but we knew something was happening. It was almost as if a whirlwind had took over the city. Like I could build from a personal experience in now why, from even going from Medina to Pelon to the desert. It was almost like it was almost as if like our peers was just getting grabbed up by different groups, and everything seemed attracted to them. Me being that I was rooted inside the nation, I was able to withstand a lot of the peer pressure to do a lot of things that my peers were doing. And I also have to acknowledge the fact that we moved at certain pivotal moments in the child's dynamic growth and development. That kind of I think helped in a way as well. So I didn't have to stay in one area to kind of because this is what I think. I don't think everybody who joined those groups necessarily felt victim or they just wanted to do wrong. It was just a lot of it was social dynamics that that we didn't understand at the time, that I don't think anyone kind of knew what was going on. So it was almost like a whirlwind, and just my peers was being we just never seen them again, and we would hear the stories that they tried to do this or they tried to do that, or they got recruited somewhere, but things didn't go too well for them, like right immediately afterwards. So we were just losing peers left and right. That was pretty much my whole childhood, just losing peers.
So having that experience, like, you know, you use the word, like, or use the term social dynamics, right? And I'm always paying attention to us as a nation and our support system, having a support system, and how important the support system is. You know, like, so what would be your takeaway from that experience in terms of like the social, you know, dynamics of the time and what it turned into, and what we can do to implement it going forward?
I would say the Nation of Guards and Nurses, especially in now Wall, was very instrumental in our city not really going too far down any particular path, because a lot of the people who were teenagers at that time were still influenced by Nation of Guards and Nurses, I would say, in some form of fashion, whether it was directly in their household, via the media at the time, music, or whatever the case was. There was,
this is before the internet.
This is before the internet. There still seemed to be an overall aura of civilization around now. Why? And I think even some of the brothers and sisters who went into those worlds, they still retain some sort of knowledge of self. So I think that the Nation of Guards and Nurses was very pivotal in a lot of the young people not succumbing to a lot of the destruction that we see in other cities around the country. But they were all child soldiers. If you look at it, similar to if you look at other countries, people were recruited into wars. The only thing is, when it happens on the soil, it's kind of looked at as just a social ill and not a world problem. But a lot of the young people that was going through problems here was not going through much different than other children
like
in the world.
Third world, so-called third world.
Yes, yeah. When the children was being recruited into wars, just given weapons and going to fight, the same dynamic happens to a lot of young people here. It just they weren't treated like victims; they were treated like perpetrators of criminals.
So I mean, what do you think would be a solution to that nowadays?
I think our nation is still a solution. I did a lot of historical research, and our nation, even from we look at what the father did with an assassination with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., our nation is very pivotal because we stand as like a vanguard. Like we're of the people, we are the people, and we can still teach to maintain some type of order and balance, and we do it with love. So I still think, as I think Gail Brewer said at the street signing, she said the 5% Nation is very pivotal in the upliftment of a lot of, I'm paraphrasing, a lot of the community members. She said we still need the 5% Nation.
The 5%ers always stood for peace, equality for everyone, demonstrated by their powerful service in the community, working tirelessly to increase cultural awareness and the importance of education, which is why Jewel has all these wonderful children here today. After school programs for children in the neighborhood still needed. Launching service projects like clothing and school supply drives, providing college preparation and support for high school students. So we stand here on the corner where the 5%ers headquarters is located. We look forward to the legacy of this group being celebrated for many years to come, and congratulations to keep the education going. Thank you very much.
So I think that 5% is not just 5% in general, but anybody, semi-civilized person, anybody who wants to do good for the community, as long as we work together and we continue to work with the youth and we use our know-how to prevent things before it happen. I'll give you an example. I'm a part of a program called Fathers Speak Up. A young man named Dionis Fernandez went about 3 years without seeing his child because the mother moved out of state with his child. He then found a flaw in the court system where that a lot of fathers trying to be involved inside their children's lives were unable to do whatever the case was. So he started volunteering and helping fathers fill petitions, keeping families together. Not necessarily berating the other parent, it's just about making sure there's some type of fairness and equality. I went to a meeting, a community board meeting in Jamaica, Queens, where the police captain said that 80% of the violent felony assaults was domestic related. So I think that if we start to attempt to use different avenues to solve problems amongst ourselves, first we start with correcting the family unit or reviving the family unit, keeping it together, then the community, and then eventually the world from that point.
Yeah, that's peace. No, actually, for our nation, God, that was something that stood out to me, like the correction of the black family, right? 1994 was my first rally, coming to and seeing, June 26, 1994, coming and seeing, God building with the earths and the earths taking care of the babies and babies being the greatest. Just seeing that family dynamic left a large impression on me, and I think that that's important. Like the family unit, and it's been, the separation of the family has been what has been the problem. So the solution is us coming back together, putting the pieces of the puzzle of the family back together. And how many brothers and sisters you have?
I have 3 physical brothers and 1 physical sister.
Okay. And they all are part of the culture?
Yes, they're all part of the culture.
Right. And so what was that experience like in terms of like growing up with siblings who had, are you the oldest or the youngest?
I'm literally the middle child.
The middle child, okay.
But I was raised kind of as the oldest, because I pretty much took responsibility for my younger brothers, my older brother and sister. They was, doing their thing. Right. So even though I'm the middle child, I'm still sort of considered the oldest to my brothers.
You took the responsibility.
Yeah. Like my brother and sister did for me. So
okay, right.
My turn.
So that explains in terms of like, did y'all choose it around the same time, or did you both like you talk about like choosing it from yourself?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Like did that happen around the same time, or like at different points in time, or?
It was definitely at different points. My sister, she's 3 years older than me, so she started studying before I did. But me and her, we built up the culture, but we didn't really like go through degrees and things like that or spring mathematics. Now I got a physical who's about a year younger than me. That's my brother who pretty much would go through degrees every day, you know, before we go to rest, wake up in the morning. Then I have my old dad. As soon as you woke out the room, you hit, so they used to read mathematics. So before I left the house at the time, I had built with 2 or 3 people about degrees or the day's math. And that actually was a very, very big help. So by the time I got amongst the nation, I was kind of prepared from inside the home, as you were just building about how the family unit is very vital to what happens. So I was well prepared.
No, that's peace.
The funny thing is though, even though my brother picked up studying after me, he now is 120 sooner than me.
Your younger brother?
Yeah, my younger brother. Yes, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So what was that like? How did you respond to that?
Yeah, it was actually good. So so we was able to build. So we was always taught to teach what you know. Right. So we was able to, I would build on my understanding, he would build on the knowledge. So we was able to succinctly, build with us and build with our peers.
Right.
That was peace.
So, and how was that dynamic with your old dad? Because him having it, and I'm sure he was proud to see y'all picking it up. But what was that dynamic? At least from your perspective.
That dynamic was very necessary. I think raising young men and women in any environment, but especially in the city, urban areas, the children need something to kind of be rooted and anchored in that can be shared with the family. Because you have, a lot of youth say going out looking for family, but the family that they find outside, they seldomly can bring it back into their homes. So having this inside the home and outside the home was very unique. And my old dad could tell me things in ways that I could understand it, and he made sure that he didn't leave mysteries out there. So let me give you an example. Growing up, when I would question my old dad, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? He would always send me to the dictionary. He wouldn't just give me answers. I didn't understand when I was younger. To the point where sometimes I should be like, yo, why don't you just tell me? Let's say the word was, I'm reading something, and I say, I see a word I don't understand. I'm saying, Dad, what does this word mean? And he's like, well, I told you I use the dictionary. You can look it up in the dictionary. I will look it up. But throughout that process, I learned many years later that now I know how to do my own research, and I'm happy to do it. So my old dad was able to give me different lessons that was able to carry me throughout the rest of my life, that was rooted in 120 degrees for mathematics due to knowledge.
Right. Now that's interesting. You say making you go do your own research.
So it's a baby, yes.
And how important that is in doing your own research. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to just providing the answers. And because as we build, and I'm just thinking about how that, you give the answers to somebody just like that, they don't necessarily appreciate it as much as when they go and dig for themselves. And when they dig for themselves, they hold on to it, they retain it more. Whereas opposed to you give it to them, it's just like, I got that, that's nothing. You know what I'm saying? So that's a note to take in terms of raising families, helping the child to do their own research, so they can see it for themselves, as opposed to you give it to them, they don't appreciate it as much. Now, what was your experience in the schools, amongst your peers and everything? Were they attracted to the knowledge, or were they repelling, or did they question it? Your experience.
Well, because of the environments that I grew up in, it was different experiences based on the environment, and a lot of that has to do with the guards, nurse, or whoever came to that area previously. That would kind of impact how the next generation looked at it. Okay. So when I got in Medina, it was pretty much everybody around the area spoke the language, even if they wasn't a member or a citizen of the 5% Nation. They either had a lot of love for us, was helped by us, or wanted to help, or it was just a very cohesive loving type of environment with all the people, I would say. At least for the babies. Like, I'm not sure how the elders. I found out later some history, but that didn't have anything with how they treated the babies. They kind of wanted everybody to stay together. So that was that experience. When I went to the Bronx, to Pelon, at the age of 12, when I started studying, I didn't know of anyone else who knew who or what a 5% it was. Not in my grade, in my immediate cipher. So I started building about spring mathematics, started building about our cultural tenets. And the children didn't really understand what I was saying, so they responded, as typically, and that's another thing that I had to develop as well, is my way of explaining things, my way of building with my peers as well, to introducing them to the culture. So it was a learning experience for both of us. But when the Wu-Tang Clan came out and they started building the math and all that, that's when a lot of my peers started coming to me, because they're like, oh yeah, we heard what you were talking about. So that kind of drummed up the popularity and the magnetic. When I moved to Far Rockaway, to the desert, there was actually peers there who was taught by older brothers and sisters in that area, and they had students. So Rockaway was actually
it's a little bit more receptive to it.
Yes.
Okay. Now you brought up like the whole Wu-Tang thing. Like I'm just curious, is like how did you see that, being that you were raised in the nation, and then you hear these brothers speaking this language and the music, but it wasn't the way they spoke it. It wasn't as pure as I had gotten it. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of mixed with a lot of street slang and whatnot. Yeah. Like how did you draw that up? How did you see it? What was your experience with that?
It was actually a very exciting time, because it was like our peers who had who was of other cultures. They had a lot of the popular culture, that expressed their ways of doing things at the time. You had like a lot of rap that was geared towards a lot of the without any type of knowledge, without any type of jewels in it for the most part. So when the Wu came out, it was like they were speaking the same language that the youth understood, but they were still planting seeds of positivity, seeds of our culture, and giving kind of guidance through the music.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say, even though it was packaged a little bit, differently.
It was packaged a little rough, right?
Yeah. It was entertainment mixed with the knowledge. I would say, it definitely helped a lot. It helped me. It helped me teach a lot of people, and it helped us get along a lot better. So now my peers are able to kind of have a different viewpoint on like what our elders look like, because if they know just only the young people, they kind of want to know what the older people look like. Right. So that kind of gave them a lot of attracting power towards the nation as well.
That just thinking about that, God, because listening to the music a lot of times, God, being that I got my education here in Mecca, and it just seemed like some of the stuff, I was kind of more like pushing back against, like, that ain't the culture. These guys, that ain't. What did he say? He said, the mystery God is a work of Yaqub, or it's like, nah, that ain't right. I was maybe a little more of a stickler for the actual lessons. Yeah. But you saying that, like, it being in the atmosphere, it helped.
It was very useful, very helpful too. And I'm not sure. Well, I'm pretty sure, because I've listened to a lot of risen a lot of the guards from Wu, some of their builds as I got older, and I think that was kind of part of their determined idea, was to kind of spread the knowledge around. Now, I wouldn't say that they were necessarily responsible to walk and talk people through 120, right. But I know a lot of people personally I met who was attracted to the culture through their music, and then they was able to find brothers and sisters to help walk them through their journey.
That's peace. So fast forward, God, you started getting into your employment with the education system. Like, what was the inspiration behind that?
again, it was my family and our nation. At the age of 14, I had my first job, which I was a camp counselor at Morningside Park, right there down 125th Street. So at 14, I was taking care of younger people. At 15, I worked again at Morningside Park, taking care of younger people. So I was taking care of my younger brothers, having older brothers and sisters take care of me. It kind of was just natural.
It's a part of the cultural tenet.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's something I was pretty much trained to do. Something that was embedded in me. As I told my old dad, it was something that was kind of like I was guided to, you know. So it ended up not only being something that helped me just throughout life, help other people, but actually helped me grow as well.
So what did you you became like a teacher or
special education teacher? Yeah.
Special education teacher.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Okay.
So,
And that's interesting. Now, why special education as opposed to regular education?
all right. So one, because special education, being a special education teacher allows me more flexibility to teach the students how I see fit. General education, teachers still have the ability to teach students as they see fit. However, they don't have the ability to use as many different strategies and techniques. In general education, students are expected to maintain with the pace, and the teacher is expected to guide the students along with the pace. Now, if that student cannot keep along with the pace, the teacher is kind of mandated by how the guidelines are to grade that student on their performance, not on what they could do. So when you know that there's certain things that's hampering the ability of the student, the teachers aren't able to kind of fix that problem just due to how the regulations are. With special education, you're allowed to differentiate. You can try as many tactics as you need to teach the student. It's not based on necessarily rigorous standards, based on actually improving the life of the student. And that's my main reason for teaching, is improving the lives of people that I teach.
Okay, so what part of special education are you dealing with? Because all right, when I was coming up in school, there was something called Ms. 1, Ms. 2, Ms. 3, then it went into like the size 6 and whatnot.
Yes.
Are you familiar with these terms?
Not anymore. They kind of changed up the way they administer special education. A lot of lawsuits happened. A lot of different things are the reasons why.
Okay.
So now I'm with something called the ICT, special education teacher, an integrated co-teaching model, where there's one general education teacher and one special education teacher. Now we work together in a class that.
And you're a special education teacher.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the classroom was mixed up with students who have IEPs, individualized education plans, due to whatever the scenario is. Now they're not always necessarily have to have some type of disability, but they may have some type of need. So that's why they're considered special needs, because they have a need. But in my viewpoint, all children or all people are individuals, and they all deserve individualized education that's geared toward them for their success. So once I found out about how IEPs work, and it kind of is something that every student needs, just a plan that's based on you, where you're at, and how the adults around you, the people around you, can support and help you. So with the model, we work with students with and without disabilities all in the same classroom, and the general education and special education teacher works together to teach both, so that no one knows who has IEPs and who doesn't, and no one is supposed to know who's the special education teacher and who's the general education teacher.
Okay, so IEP is
individualized education plan.
Okay, now it's interesting. You know, now when I brought up Ms. 1, Ms. 2, so Ms. 1 was the children that had difficulties in learning.
Yes.
Right. Ms. 2 were they labeled the Ms. 2 ones was emotionally disturbed.
Yes.
And I think the Ms. 3 was a combination of the two, and size 6 kind of went into like criminal stuff.
Yes.
You know, and you said that there was some lawsuits. Like I'm interested in that history, and as you said, I know a little bit about it because I come from a special ed background.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and back then, you know, because I never had a learning disability, right? But I was labeled as ADHD, right?
Yeah.
And I was labeled, somebody who just had all this energy, and I just I enjoyed fighting. You know what I'm saying? So they put me in Ms. 2, but then I wound up put in something called mainstream.
Yeah.
So mainstream is kind of like what you're talking about, where it's you have the child integrated into the regular education or general education classes, and it was crazy that like I want to be advancing and becoming the smartest kid in school.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
According to, and going amongst the general education,
Yeah.
and only my homeroom was considered special ed.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in like how the education system handles that.
The dynamic.
It handles that dynamic.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a question first. What shifted that? Do you think that shifted from you being placed into that classroom to your performance increasing? Was it like a teacher you ran into?
No, I can read, I can count, but I it just seemed like this is not enough. My attention went elsewhere. My attention went into poking at my other classmates, or talking or getting up, and I actually was using language that I found on TV or out in the streets in the classroom. Like I told the teacher to suck my divine eye. Being very disruptive.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But what changed, was, so I went from a class of 30 plus students at a time to a class where it was like 9, 10 students.
Yeah.
But in the special ed class, I was able to fight. Like in those regular ed classes, you fight, you get suspended.
Yes.
In the special ed class, they let you fight. They take you to the side, they let you cool off, and then you come back.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it wasn't like I got suspended and I got disrupted. My education it's more like just chill out, come back. And then I also learned how to direct my energy a little bit more in terms of how to not just always just be confrontational. I learned how to kind of just this other person got some issues too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So my problems were not the only problems in the classroom. So I guess that was the kind of like, me just paying attention to it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I just wanted to like how do you see that whole dynamic? Because you say the IEPs, they kind of include. It seems like, at least from my experience, the mainstream has merged with the special education in a way. Whereas back then they was trying to merge it where they put me in mainstream, but it still was a separate thing.
Yes.
So now they're actually integrating. Now, how many students are there at the time?
It could be up to 25, 26 to even 30. Now, when you have the self-contained classrooms, that's when you start getting the ratios, like maybe one teacher or 3 paras, and then maybe
3 paras.
Yeah, and then maybe about 6 to 9 students. So you got different ratios.
3 paras? Like that's crazy though.
Yeah, depending on the needs of the classroom, that's kind of how it gets staffed. And there's certain actual requirements, like certain students have in their IEPs that they must have a paraprofessional to support their learning throughout the process.
Right.
Now, what I take away from what you said, so their environment changed, their expectations changed, and you found like some coping methods pretty much, or some methods to kind of direct your energy. Yeah,
and also at that time they were medicating kids. You know what I'm saying? They were medicating, and Ritalin is that part of the lawsuits that you were talking about, or?
I'm not that I've seen directly, but just in general, the lawsuits are how special education teachers, students were treated. Some have mandated services that they were not receiving. You had the names of special education services from the history of special education. You had like some like the schools for the imbeciles, different things like that.
School of imbeciles.
Yeah, special education in New York. I did a thorough history of it, and it was just the names of what they called them at the time. So, special education in New York has a very detailed history, I would say.
God, I've seen some wild things in my time in special ed. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, again, like, you know, I've seen kids, like, you know, like the psychologist at the school recommended to my or recommended that I be put on Ritalin.
Yeah.
Right? I was put on Ritalin, and the same teacher that I was terrorizing saw that and actually told my OR, don't do that to him. Said, don't do that to him. And my OR discontinued it immediately. So I might have taken it maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
But then I seen students, my peers, on Ritalin, and that really slowed them down. That really damaged their growth and development. So when you speak of like lawsuits and you speak about this history of New York City special education, and then you're telling me now like the changes that are taking place. It's very fascinating to me. You know what I'm saying?
It actually is. There's a lot of history I'm not gonna go into right now, but the history of education in general in the U.S., just in the world education, especially the U.S. and New York, is very interesting. And this kind of lends to one of your questions that you asked me about what's one of the solutions. Is we have to put ourselves where the children are, whether it be inside their schools, whether it be in their communities, whether it be where they go for entertainment. We need to implant ourselves there so that when whatever issue they deal with as they grow up, they have somebody sensible to help guide and direct them. And that's kind of was my idea of becoming a teacher. Matter of fact, you are a big influence when I became a teacher as well.
Oh wow, really?
Yes.
Wow, peace, God.
Yes, yeah. You had a video where it was ABG7, and he was saying that back in I forgot what year that they was telling brothers and sisters were coming to I guess the elders and saying that they were having issues inside the school systems with their children and the school staff. The ABG7 said that it was advised that all the brothers and sisters go into the schools, whether it be parent teacher associations or whatever it was. I took that and was like, let me become a teacher. I'll be in the school. I'll be able to help not only my child, but all the other children that's around there. And it worked out like that. I was actually the only male teacher in one building. Out of about 40-something teachers, I was the only male teacher. And then in the other building, there was only about 3 male teachers and about 60 female teachers. I mean, no disrespect. I'm not trying to separate this by gender.
No, God. Well, that's important, though.
Yeah.
Because I could say in my time of schooling, I had very few male teachers.
Yes.
And they, you know, and a lot of times they were weird. They were, you know, something was off with them. You know what I'm saying? But that's an interesting dynamic.
The good thing was my first day of teaching. We have something called student teaching, where you have to learn how to teach for a certain amount of credit, a certain amount of hours. My first day of student teaching, I was actually able to stop a young man from doing something that would have severely impacted the rest of his life. But me just being there, me and him had a conversation about it. He wasn't being understood the way that he felt like he should have been understood or treated, and I was able there to add a buffer and sort of bridge the communication between the teachers that was presently there and the students. And that's when I realized that I had a unique way of building with the students, and a lot of it come from the teachings of the 5% nation, of our nation, and how we interact with the youth, how we respect the youth, how important they are to us. They can that actually resonates with them. So, as you know, we say we got to show and prove. You've seen before you heard. That child kind of knows who you are and what you're about before you ever open your mouth.
Right.
And that's helpful, or it can work for you or against you, depending on who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah. God, this conversation is so rich. You know what I'm saying? Because of like so many different areas where I could go in terms of like, you know, special ed and what it means to our youth, what it means to, especially in this culture, right?
Yes.
You know, and even the adults, God, because to be honest with you, I see a lot of special ed. I recognize, because I'm from that background, I recognize special ed in our nation.
Yeah.
I recognize special ed in our community.
Yeah.
You know, and not just the 5% community, the black community, right? Even those who were in general education, they needed special education and may not have gotten it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's interesting that you said that, because that's exactly why I started my company, pardon me, SPED and STEM, so that I can give the individualized help to every student. Because it's not fair that only one particular segment, one particular segment of the student population gets kind of what they need. So the stigma on special education is that sort of the child maybe or the student may be not able to do it, so they need some like additional help. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's as simple as one student you may be able to tell them the instructions. One student you just write it down and you show it to them. So it's just about doing the knowledge to that individual, kind of seeing what they need, how we can help them, and then just doing it. With special education, there's less barriers to do that. With general education, there's kind of a set regimen and it's very rigid, and it's hard to detach a student from having to follow that guideline. So even though we have great teachers, we have great students, it's just the policy that's in place doesn't allow great teachers to be great teachers, and it kind of doesn't allow great students to be great students. It allows them both to adhere to the curriculum that's in place, and it allows them to adhere to the school rules, regulations, and policies. Now, they don't always match up. And I think that that's sort of why we see some of the issues that we see, is because when students aren't getting what they need in school, they kind of just go somewhere else, and they kind of don't get what they need. They may get what they want when they go somewhere else, but it's typically not what they need, and then it just kind of falls. The gap becomes bigger, and then that's when they have there's people who teaching in the streets who hope when willfully they can run into, they can kind of guide them back on the right path, or guide them back towards some sort of educational training. Because not everybody, like you said, not everybody learns the same way. Right. And statistically speaking, males in particular, we don't have the same physical capabilities as females to just sit still. It has something to do with the testosterone in our body, which encourages us to get up and move. And the females have estrogen, which allows them to kind of stay in a more relaxed manner. And that's why you see the disparities and the disciplinary tactics between the males and the young males and young females. And that goes into with the not to get too graphic, but if you look at statistically, it's about 90% of the school people who fire weapons in schools are males, and it's due to a lot of unmet needs. And if we're looking at statistics, there's too many statistics to show us that some needs are being unmet in certain populations. Although we have to cater to all human families on planet Earth and get everybody what they need, we also have to still look at if there's a disproportionate way that things aren't being too equitable, there's a lack of equality in certain areas. Let me phrase that, it's the job of the person who sees it to do it. And it should be their pleasure to do it. But eventually, if we all work on things that we see, we're gonna keep improving.
So that brings up another interesting point. What is your take on co-ed education, right? Like the mixing of male and female as well, as you see like with the Nation of Islam and the way that they set up their schooling system, or how they set up their thing. A lot of times it was they had the males in one class and the females in another class, right? There was a separation of it. Like, do you agree with that, or is there room for something else like co-ed?
Alright, that's a good question. I would say it depends on what's being taught. Because there's certain things where I think the students will benefit from co-ed, so that, we can see kind of the natural interactions between the different groups and how they interact with each other. And then there's certain things where maybe the males, it would be more beneficial if we kept the groups together. Like certain activities and things of that nature, certain things where like boys are pretty much have an easier time relating to boys, or girls have an easier time relating to girls. But I don't think that we should be extremely cautious in how we separate, because any separation, we know what that does historically. Right. Our lessons in our nation teach that any separation can cause devil or cause some type of disturbance amongst us. So we have to be very cautious in how we go about doing things. However, the truth must be told, and it has to be told how it is. but we still have to be cautious in how we go about solutions. So I think that to answer your question directly, I would say, in general, I don't think co-ed, I think co-ed is always the way to go, unless there's any particular or specific tasks that need to be done where it'd be more beneficial. But I think that we all need to kind of learn how to live amongst each other, and the sooner we allow ourselves to be amongst each other, the sooner we start finding ways to coexist. I think that we spend too long apart, whether it's like boys and girls, the different seeds of the planet Earth. The more time we stay apart, the more differences. The more times we come together, the more similarities we can work on.
Yeah, just in my opinion, I think it comes down to balance. I think that there are certain things, there are certain segments of education that should be fashioned to the different, whether it be, the genders,
Yes.
right? But then, like you said, too much separation causes a certain kind of division, and then it causes all these different problems. So balance is key. What has been useful to you from this nation and special education? What do you think with special education that you could actually apply to this nation?
What's been useful to me in special education from our nation is our ability to teach in general, but especially teach the youth. And our nation has a way of dealing with the youth that's, I find, in my personal experience, is very unique. And this is me from my personal experience as being a member of the Nation of God's Nurse, or a citizen of the 5% Nation, whatever word terminology, but we all the same. Or whether we're talking about what I saw in the streets. I've had peers who were, let's say, to put it very active in the community and just doing different things in general. And I noticed that the 5%ers in my neighborhood have a unique way of being able to garner the attention of youth, whether they come in our nation name, come in the name of another nation, or come in the name of whatever. Members of our nation have a unique ability to draw in a lot of the youth. So
magnetic.
the magnetic. I was able to take that, and I was able to do things that literally principals have come to me and said, how did you get this student to communicate? No other teacher ever been able to do it. I've learned from our nation that as you deal with people as people, you come humbly, you come with humility. I mean, of course, sometimes you have to match the energy, and that's what I learned as well. There was some students that, if they're kind of let me put it like this too. A lot of the students are extremely joyful. They're very, very happy young people, and all they need is somebody to just try to connect with them. Once you make that connection, you can teach them. You can try to teach them without connecting, it's not going to work. You connect with them, you can teach them anything. So that's what I learned. What I learned from my students that I taught in special education, or just in general, that I would say will be useful for our nation, is that our nation's been right and exact since year one. So we have no beginning nor ending, but our nation has always been right. The things and the abilities that's in all of us, and as well as our youth, there's no way to measure it. I've had students in first grade who I've had sophisticated conversation about mathematical computations that I cannot have with students or even my peers. And these are special education students in first grade, and I realized that we all have unique abilities and talents that need to be honed. And I've had this same conversation with my students' parents, and we have great conversations about how wonderful they are. And we just come to the same conclusion. We just hope that we can develop a way where the students are always made to feel how special they are, and it's reflected in the environments that they go into. So we have to kind of change the environment, or make the environment more suitable for our youth, not try to change our youth to make them more suitable for the environment. So I would say what I realized was that our environment must be cultivated so that we can grow up our youth. No matter how they come to us, they all come to us as students, and it's our responsibility to teach them. So what I learned from working in schools and amongst the special education population was that we need to make the environment conducive to learning and conducive to the youth success, regardless to anything else. So we can all agree to that we need this environment to be conducive to uplifting and growing the youth. Whether I want to come in and talk a certain way or dress a certain way, if it's not conducive to the youth, I must say, okay, let me do what's conducive for the youth. And the same thing vice versa with anyone else. They want to come in and say or do whatever. If it's conducive for the youth, by all means. But if it's not, we just have to agree on
what's conducive for the youth. Right?
Yes, and we have to. Well, I think we already know what's conducive for the youth. I think we just have to agree to just do it.
Yeah, we don't always agree though.
Facts. You're right.
That's the thing that I'm saying that we don't always agree, and it's gonna take some doing the knowledge to each other. Us acknowledging each other's knowledge and seeing what works and what doesn't work, and coming together and figuring out, coming up with solutions. But as we seen at this last parliament, we don't always agree.
Yes, that's a fact.
Yeah.
You're right. We don't always agree, and what I realized from doing some history in our nation as well, just doing some research, it seems like nothing is kind of unique. These are kind of things that have been built about. It's just, I think the solutions kind of maybe wasn't as built about as the actual issues. So I think that if we just start building about certain things, we should be able to come to some sort of consensus.
Right.
Yeah, as you said, we just need to just keep doing the work. Right. As long as we all just keep teaching, I think that eventually everything's gonna balance out the way it should.
Something interesting that you said, that kind of stuck out to me in terms of like the special education, the population of the special education, special educated population. Do you find that the special education population has, how can I put it, like they've kind of hoarded a lot of our talented people, our talented youth, like the misunderstood youth are the ones who are put in special ed, but they're really the ones who are the most brightest, the ones who, like you said, knows the mathematical computations. Right. You see them, they may be socially awkward, however, they may be very artistically inclined or very mathematically inclined, scientifically inclined. They just have issues maybe relating socially, right? And that would kind of ostracizes them and puts them into these different groups. Do you find that to be true in your profession?
Yes, 100%. And just to emphasize the point that you made, you're 100% right. Sometimes our students are very, very gifted. They're very advanced. They learn extremely fast. And if they're put in situations where they're being meant to slow down, sometimes they literally withdraw inside themselves.
Yes.
So some students who may have been labeled or may have been seen to be one way, it was just a coping method. They were trying to keep themselves entertained, so they did certain things that may have been misdiagnosed. But yes, I would think that a lot of it is due to all right, when we have this conversation, we have to kind of be specific about, and we talk about the New York school system, because there are schools and there are programs that's kind of making solutions to those. So when I speak about, I'm speaking from my personal experience in the DOE, in the general, because I don't want to mislabel other programs, initiatives. Being a teacher, I know how hard a lot of educators work to teach their population. Right. But to your point, I've been a DOE student, I've been a DOE teacher, and I did realize that a lot of gifted students are, instead of their skills being honed and them trying to kind of be developed into the best possible students that they can be, they're kind of labeled as difficult to some capacity and are put inside those rooms. Now, this is where parents and the community comes involved. It's knowing that student, knowing that child, and be able to work with the school, work with the principal, work with the support staff in order to make sure that the children are being fairly and appropriately diagnosed, making sure it's not done too early. We have a case where a lot of students are diagnosed way too early, and they just kind of gotta grow and learn and mature, which has nothing to do with anything that may be.
And a lot of times the parents don't have patience for that, and they diagnose them early, which leads to more issues.
Yeah, a lot of times the parents don't have patience, or they just don't have the know-how. A lot of things that afflict our communities nowadays, and when I say our communities, I mean all human families, just the world in general, especially with the youth. A lot of these things are things that's just now being developed in the youth. We have different devices that wasn't available back then, so it's affecting birth, it's affecting the biology of the children. I'll give you an example. A lot of my research on autism and people on the autism spectrum, there's a lot of nutritional things that's very similar. I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but when you start to notice certain patterns, a lot of chips, a lot of salt, there's a lot of things that if you start to notice, there's a lot of patterns in nutritional things as well, and different behaviors, and especially with when we deal with, and I'm not a professional psychiatrist or psychiatrist, so I'm not going to go too deep into the actual spectrums, but there are solutions. Well, let me rephrase that, not solutions, because that would infer that there's a problem. There are things that can be done in any situation. It's just us doing the knowledge to what can be done and actually doing it. That can be the difference in how our communities look.
Right. Okay. So you know that. We're touching on like my own personal history, right? So this is why this is fascinating for me, because actually what you're talking about is simply the right and wrong foods.
Yes, that has a lot to do with it, mentally and physically. You
You
can say something to a child and they can never talk again for the rest of their life.
You can say something to a child
and they can never talk again and be nonverbal from 5 years old until their whole life. So it's mental and physical food.
Wow.
So
okay. Well,
one word can change a nation. One word can change
absolutely.
a baby.
And we have this is something that we learn in our nation, right?
Yes.
But just to touch on the physical foods, right? And in my personal experience, like when I was in kindergarten, my mother was racking her brain on why am I bouncing off the walls like that? Why am I acting, because I was a hyper kid. I was really hyper. And then she discovered Pop-Tarts. She was giving me Pop-Tarts for lunch, and didn't realize that those things were, spiking my sugar, and I'm having this sugar high, bouncing off the walls, and then having this crash later on. So, the right and wrong foods are important to pay attention to.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? In terms of the development of our youth, and a lot of times our parents, I see parents giving their children these hot chips.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or these certain kinds of Doritos. Right,
Takis, all those.
Right, and all of this is like, wow. Do you know what you're doing to the children? So it's just like this is a study that I'm actually interested in. As you build it, I'm like, then we gotta build more often because you're in that field. I'm actually trying to get into that field in terms of education and bringing some of my skill sets into the DOE. But also like the studies, independent study. I've been studying this really my whole life, on my own, just watching, children around me, a child being on Ritalin and being slowed down, the growth and development being impeded because of this medication that has been prescribed to them, as well as these the different foods, and this is part of the reason why I've actually become a part of the nation. Because I started saying, this. Y'all have some solutions here that I could implement, right? And a lot of times it's so easy to overlook these solutions, but if you just pay attention to them, these are profound solutions.
Yep.
So which brings it into the realm of politics of how do you actually implement those into the school system as a whole, right?
Yes.
God, I was put in special ed in the first grade.
Yeah.
And left back, right? And I was put into the mainstream in first grade. However, they kept me in special ed all the way up until the 8th grade. They didn't want to take me out of special ed. I mean, because I was always fighting.
It's a money thing. If you have a perfect A student, I'm gonna give you an example. That principal gets $1 for that student. If you have that same student, but they're not perfect A, they need a little help, principal get $1.15. All right, they got behavior issues, $1.75. So special education, $2.25. So the principals are actually, I've said this to the superintendent, so it's not nothing I ain't saying to nobody. Why are our principals in our schools being incentivized to have low performing students where if the students are performing at a high level, they're kind of penalized financially? This is something that I literally have the superintendents working on. Why is this going on? But yeah, that's what it's the money.
Okay, so
they're making money off the suffering of our children. That's why, to your point, and this is things that I would need to build with people who have some knowledge themselves. Because if you just give this information, people are gonna go crazy. They're gonna be pounding on the school principals' doors, and that's why I'm an advocate, because I can help people do it the correct way. But if they go bang on their principal door right now and say, "Yo, my student been in special education for the last 3 years because y'all don't care about helping them because y'all gonna lose money," they would be right, but they wouldn't be right and exact. And they probably get arrested. Now, if I coach them for advocacy, we could shut down what's going on. We get principals removed, get principals put in who actually want to uplift the community and not just pack their budget.
But is it the principal's fault or is it the people that are incentivizing them?
It's both. It's everybody. It's even the teachers, even me. Then that's why I had to leave, because I'm like, I became part of the problem at a certain point. Because if you are within that realm and you're causing too much change being affected, and I've heard this directly from the principal, they don't care that you're right. What they're gonna do is get you removed so that they can continue business as usual. Yeah. But this is not stuff to build with the general public about, because it's gonna incite too much anger.
God, listen,
I just want to let you know you're right, and the reason why is they want the money.
God, I'm saying it. Look, so see, I'm building with you kind of like candidly, like as if the camera's not here, right? But I said my old earth took me to a psychiatrist. God, I was 6 years old, and this psychiatrist, sat me in his office, had a whole bunch of. He's a child psychiatrist, so he has these games and so he's playing. And as I'm playing the games, he's asking me questions. He's posing as my friend, right? And I'm telling him all these different things, and I feel like I could tell him anything. Like the way the psychologist was like, you can tell me anything, right? And I'm just spilling my mind to him, sharing all these different things. And there's a lot of it was wrong foods that was in the environment. A lot of things were things that just wasn't right and exact. But I'm noticing as I'm telling him these things, he's writing down. And then he puts me in another room with a bunch of toys and has my old earth, sits down with her and tells her basically, put him on Ritalin. He has ADHD, leave him back, put him in special ed. And my old earth, being a single parent, just she's listening to and taking the 10% on face value. You know what I'm saying? And now that kind of leads into, my trajectory of where I was going in life in terms of at 6 years old, now I'm being left back, I'm being put in special ed. But then crazy is that the very, very first year in special ed, I'm awarded as he's actually the smartest kid in the school. Not the class, the school. So, and my mom was proud, but it was like, but then they kept me in special ed, because I wanted to fight, and I had a short temper. So that was an excuse. He needs special ed. And really, you just need
the environment to be conducive to
a specialized education, not special education. Well, it is special education, right? But
all education should be special. Because the special, that just denotes that it was individualized. That it was made, like, parents tell children you're special, meaning you're kind of unique. So special education really is only supposed to mention that it was just an individualized education meant for that person. So that's why I named my company SPED and STEM, because we're all special. We all need type of special education. There's nothing wrong with being specially educated. That's actually the solution, not the problem. Special education is the solution. But not the labels.
Not the label, right.
Just the individual attention to the student.
Wow. So, and you said that you found within the system of special education in the DOE that you're able to actually do more for the children than, because because they don't know. They're like, what solutions do you have? Like, but with the general education, it's more like, and that's crazy. Is it like the general education kind of, wasn't that sponsored by like one of like the Rockefellers or something like that, or
something to that effect? I think Horace Mann and the Rockefeller, the way the U.S. And the New York education system was set up. Education initially was designed for students to be successful in their environment. For example, if I was going to school in Ohio in, let's just say 1905 perhaps, I may have needed to know, and I was in a rural area where there was mostly farms, I would have needed to know how to farm. So the school system was based on the needs of the community. If you're in like a textile environment, you're like in New York somewhere and there's a lot of factories, your school system may have been geared towards factory working. But something happened in the U.S. system where it was just a standardized education swept across the country, and that's when pretty much everybody was kind of encouraged to teach a similar curriculum. So if, let's just say, someone moves from New York to Virginia, they can kind of stay on the same educational pipeline or pathway. But it's now, there's a lot of sweeping changes being done. But yeah, I would just say we just need to really monitor the student and what the student needs, and then provide what they need. I think that's the simplest solution.
Okay, so that kind of brings you back to the whole politics thing. Right?
Oh yes.
So you've gotten into politics, and your aim is to, well, you said you add on to what you with the whole program.
My aim for as a Queens Borough President is to make the borough of Queens, at least where I have the political authority to do so, self-sustained, and let them have self-sufficient neighborhoods. So my goal is to ensure that the community is represented not only in business, in politics, and the environment, and things of that nature. So what the role of Queens Borough President will allow me to do, it'll allow me to be the biggest advocate for residents in Queens. The role of Queens Borough President, you're kind of like an advocate. You advocate for the city budget for your borough. You advocate for, you administer how city services are administered in the borough. So I will create different task force in Queens to ensure that the education department in Queens is actually serving the students to the most efficient way that can possibly be done. And that's when we have to start looking at some of these policies that's in place. I will also be able to implement things like community neighborhoods, community gardens, where community members will have access to fresher foods that's not shipped in from far away, where it can lose nutrients. Once you pluck a fruit or vegetable off the ground, it starts to lose some of its nutritional value. And we're feeding ourselves and our families and our community foods that typically travel hours. We're knowingly putting less nutrient dense food, knowing that. So we're knowingly operating at a level that's not as efficient as possible, but we're expecting our children to operate at an efficient level. So my plan in becoming the Queens Borough President is I'll be able to help with the food, clothing, and shelter of the community so that they have everything that they need to thrive, and also regain community control. I think, well, not that I think, this is just a fact. Community members who are more involved in their community will result in less crime, if not no crime, it will stop congestion, because if we have community members working inside the community, that's less traveling that needs to be done. It also uplifts the morale of the community. So when a child goes into a daycare, a school, a store, they should see their mother, brother, sister, uncle. They should see someone who represents somewhere where they came from, so they can mentally project themselves in that same position. So if you never met a doctor, fireman, police officer, lawyer, teacher, besides like in whatever official capacity, they're less likely to aspire to those roles. There's all types of statistics that show if a young male has a male teacher, they're 30 times more likely to further themselves in school, and the statistics just keep going up to that degree. And I know that personally because I had several male students tell me that they want to become a teacher just because they took one class with me.
Wow.
So the statistics in those cases seem to be kind of on the right pathway. So my role as Queens Borough President will allow me to affect all types of changes as well as help facilitate community cohesion. Queens is the most diverse borough in the world. Queens is actually one of the most diverse places in the world, if not the most diverse place in the world. From just the different dynamics of all the different cultures, foods, a lot of different things. It's like a melting pot. So I would like to bring back World Fairs, where we bring everybody in the world again back to Queens to participate in different environments. That's going to help jump up the economy. That's going to help our people interact with other people, and then we all realize that we're not as different as we may have been led to believe we are, or some of us may think. So that's my idea. I can help the community sustain itself. I can help repair the community, and I can help bring a sense of unity amongst all human families of planet Earth.
Okay. Well, educate me on the science of borough presidents and how they hold office, right? Is it like a yearly? or like a 3-year, 4-year term, or?
Yes. It's a 4-year term.
It's a 4-year term, right. And you vote every 4 years. And when is that? How does that election run? Is it run like during like the November elections, or is it like another time period?
I'll give you a rundown. So for right now, my campaign's in a fundraising portion of the campaign. From now until about the middle of March, it's about 4 weeks. The petitioning period will start. That's when it'll be me and my campaign staff will start to get petition signatures from residents of Queens, saying that they support my run for Queens Borough President. And then once you acquire a certain amount of petition signatures, you then give that to the Department of the Board of Elections, and then you're put on the ballot from the primaries is in June, and then from June to November will be the actual election. So as of now, it's fundraising. From March till June, it will be petitioning to get on the primary ballot, and then from June to November will be the general election, and then whoever wins that election will be taking office in January of 2026.
Okay. Now, well, build on the importance of politics. Like, a lot of times in our nation, we don't really mix too well with politics, right? But if you're not involved with politics, you'll most likely be put in control under somebody who knows the science of politics. So can you build on that? How you see your mindset in terms of politics and in particular this nation, and why a lot of times we may stray away from politics, although the man himself, Allah, dealt with politics, but a lot of us, don't deal with politics.
Yeah. I would say a lot of it may be to do with historically, maybe it might be just an individual personal thought process as it goes. I haven't really heard of any national or any of our nation's national stance on politics. I've did research where I've kind of come to my own understanding, and I've built with different brothers and sisters about it. So from my view, we do have a lot of brothers and sisters who are actively involved in politics inside their community. They're actively involved in a lot of different things relating to politics. Then you have brothers and sisters who may have the viewpoint that politics is not something that members of the nation of God's nerves of 5% should deal with, that is somehow
it's like a white man thing.
Yeah,
right?
some type of superstitious thing where it can somehow be problematic if you get yourself involved with it. I have something that I coined myself. I call it the ostrich syndrome, where people seem to be under the impression that if they just ignore it, they just turn away from it, that it somehow won't be able to touch them. Now, this becomes dangerous when you are speaking about politics. One, because if we take that stance, then that means there's less people to advocate for the school policies. That means our children are under the policies of not everybody in the community. We all agree, well, we should all agree that everybody's voice matters, everybody's voice counts, that we're all equal, we all have some type of equity amongst ourselves, and that your build is as important as my build is as important as a 5-year-old's build, or a 10-year-old, or a 14-year-old. Now, when you don't involve yourself in politics, you're taking your own voice away. So now, instead of it being 1,000 people voting to get funding for your child's school or the school inside your community to ensure that the children in your community have positive things to engage in. So now let's say you don't vote, so they don't get the funding. So instead of these children having a recreation center that you literally have the power to vote or to just literally ask your local city council people to do these type of things, if we turn a blind eye, then a lot of times they don't even know that there may be a need in the community, so they don't put that community center, and now you have dozens of your community youth roaming the streets because you didn't vote to put a community center for them to have a safe place to stay. That's just one example of how involving ourselves in the political process can not only help you, but it can literally save the lives of our youth. And when I say this, money is not the solution to everything, but our local elected officials have something called discretionary funding. This discretionary funding is available to anyone who has a valid use for it, anyone who asks for it to be given. So it's not necessarily that you ask for money to be given to you. You may say, hey, there's a not-for-profit down the block that can you please send some funding so that they can help plant more gardens in our neighborhood. They can help with recreational centers. They can help do several things. Now, if we don't involve ourselves in the political process, we kind of eliminate our ability to affect change on certain levels. Yes, we can still be in our neighborhoods, be a part of our neighborhoods, and still be fully involved in our community members, but we need to also maybe start looking at how effective can we be if we start to channel some funding and start to be able to literally have control of what happens in our neighborhoods, where you're the person who decides how the city resources are administered, where shelters go, where schools go, where community food banks go. Now, if we have the right people in the right place at the right time, then I think that we will start to see a lot of the right things being done. And politics is an avenue to allocate resources to different communities where it's set up for us to at least come to some type of conclusion about how we're going to work together. And politics is one way that was established, at least in this country, as for us to work together, or as an avenue for everyone to work together.
Right. I think a lot of times the disconnect is, you have local politics, and then you have the federal politics, like the big show, the big entertainment of the presidential elections, and then you're voting, a lot of times, the Democratic versus Republican, and the ideology of that, and you think you're being liberal, you're trying to liberate the minds of the people, and then really what you're really is getting further away from certain family values, and then a lot of what the president is doing, there's a disconnect with the actual local people, right? So us not having a grip of our local politics, a lot of times takes us out of the discussion on those
The
higher,
broader, yes.
the federal politics. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so a lot of it has to do with the lack of knowledge, and the lack of knowledge winds up being a disconnect for us as a people.
Yes.
To trying to like I said, this election, you had the polarity of like, do you want a black woman as a president, or you don't want a black woman? You don't want a woman running your show, period. You know what I'm saying? And then you got, well, Trump is actually the one who is going to get us money, or is he really, or is he really, So these are the things that I think that we are disconnected as a whole, as a people.
Yes.
What are some solutions that you think that could help us to have more of a dog in this fight, in terms of politically?
I think, as you just brought up, I think it's a lack of knowledge that caused, like you said, the disconnect or the gap.
Mm-hmm.
I think that knowledge is going to be a solution to solve this problem. So I think that those who are the best knowers, or those who do know about this field, I think it's our responsibility to kind of born some of that science to our brothers and sisters. And again, I'm extremely careful on how we go forward with this, because this is all personal choice. We never want to take away anybody's autonomy. Like, we don't force anybody to do anything, even
Right.
with knowledge itself. This
Right.
is a choice. Everything is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
What we have to do is, once we do have the knowledge, we do have a responsibility as well. So
Right.
let's not ignore the fact that once you do come under knowledge itself, we have a responsibility to teach.
Mm-hmm.
We have the responsibility to uplift those around us.
Mm-hmm.
If we see a way to do it and we willingly choose not to, then you're kind of not doing your duty in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's your personal preference, whatever the reason is, if you literally see that there's a way to make improvements, but for whatever your personal issue is with it, you choose not to, then that's part of why we see some of the unmet needs that we see. Is because 2 votes is more effective than 1. So, like to say, for example, I have my 1 vote, and I see what needs to be done. It counts, yes. But collectively, if we was to all kind of see what needs to be done, and we all decided that we know who needs to do it, and we stood behind that person and linked our resources and our efforts towards, then that individual can make a collective change. And if we all know, if we all are if we all adhere to supreme mathematics and our cultural tenets, then what one does, we all do. Where one go, we all go. Allah is seen and heard everywhere for a reason. And it's because we all are doing our job in our respective spaces, our respective community. Now, it does also still come to the point where we all still need to come together for one common cause and show that we can. And I think that us doing that, it's an actual fact that us doing that, we can not only change the course of what's happening in our country, but the world. The president has mostly the powers to deal with foreign affairs, make treaties, and things of that nature. Imagine you or one of us in that role, spreading love, peace, and happiness, and educating all the families of planet Earth for the world. So the more of us that's on the world stage, the more power it gives us to do our duty. And if we have the ability to do it on a large scale, then I think it's our responsibility to do so.
Okay. Yeah, I think we touched on everything. Is there anything else you wanted to add on?
Well, I just like to say, I thank you very much for all the work that you do. I recall I was at the Parliament when you kind of was presented to the nation in a way, and you kind of let us know that you were going to be doing the recordings and things of that nature along with the God Rashim. Yeah, I was there at that Parliament.
Okay.
I'm glad you stayed fast. We needed you. I think you have a unique way of presenting our nation, and you have a unique way of teaching where you've helped me become the person I am today and do the things
peace,
that I
God.
do.
Peace,
You
God.
exposed me to a lot of things and people that I may not have never known or heard had it not been for you. So I just want to say thank you.
Peace, God. Well, just to speak to that, God, you know, I appreciate, you know, your words, God, because I get a lot of flack from all different directions.
Yes.
Again, we don't all agree. You know what I'm saying? However, I do have a determined idea with this in terms of, you know, presenting our nation in a positive light.
Yes.
And also, you know, showing, because, like, you know, 5%ers are the most hard-headed people, God, right?
Sometimes some of us
So, more often than not, right? So it's almost like putting a mirror up too. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times, you know, it's more like if I tell you, "God, you got a booger in your nose. You got a booger in your nose. You got a booger in your nose," and you just keep going on and on and on. You ain't trying to. You just trying to tell me whatever you want to tell me, but you're not paying attention to that. You may have some snot in your eyes and booger in your nose, and you may need to fix your hat. You need to fix your glasses.
Yes.
Now you get to see yourself.
Yes.
You can do it yourself. Now you get to see. So, you know, there may be some things, you know, that I may share on here that everybody doesn't necessarily agree with, right? You know what I'm saying? However, it's something where we could take note and take account. These are some of the areas where we need to fix.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And I this is how I kind of, you know, use it as a mirror to, you know, for everybody, to show how beautiful we are, but it's also to show some of the work that we need to do.
I say it definitely worked. I definitely avoided some stumbling blocks. Listen to the God's Word build about certain things. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna avoid that. I'm gonna avoid that. And it takes being vulnerable. It takes people coming up here and saying things that may not be properly viewed, or saying certain things about their history that you never know who's gonna learn from it, who's gonna grow from it, or whose life you literally just saved by, making knowledge born.
Right. What was the brother that you said that you saw on here?
Oh, Qasim, the God Qasim.
Oh, right.
He was building about the science of the clock with the God Supreme.
The signs of the clock, how every hour would start from 12. 12 o'clock, 5 after, you read the clock, what it say, knowledge going through knowledge, wisdom going through understanding. When it hits 6, it's equality, knowledge, wisdom, because it don't go through no more. It just go in, the new out, something too. And then it's God going into knowledge. When it hit 12 again, it's knowledge, wisdom, knowledge. Then when it's 5 after, it's knowledge. Then it's wisdom going through knowledge. You know?
You got me sitting there fucking with a clock tonight. You know that, right?
I'm just saying.
I know the God Supreme very well. He helped mold and guide me since a youth. One of the brothers I looked up to, I still do. Brothers I look to for guidance. But Qasim, that was my Qasim. I'm not Qasim.
Yeah.
The brother was building with the God Supreme. As I feel comfortable with God Supreme, telling him things that I think of. The God said in public that he noticed that some older brothers purposely withhold information from the younger brothers.
I'll say this. I've encountered a lot of older brothers, not elders. We don't do that.
Yeah.
But I've encountered a lot of older brothers that purposefully just don't tell you shit.
Yeah, I know.
God Supreme responded by saying, I know they do. But the way, it was just the purity and the intent, I think, in Qasim when he said it allowed me to kind of explore certain things that I noticed in my past, especially being amongst our nation from a baby. There's certain things you don't understand why certain things happen. And if no one kind of mentions it's harder for you to kind of learn and grow from some of these experiences. But when you have people brave enough to build about the experiences, it unlocks different ways for other people to learn and grow. So I would say from that, I realized that for me, it was a lot of things that I've seen and heard as a youth that I could not make sense of, that I refuse to make sense of to this day. That certain things that I never want to be a part of, certain things that I see that I refuse to do. And hearing that there's other brothers who've seen it and witnessed it, and they have their own view on it as well, I realized that it's okay to be yourself. That we don't have to blend in with anybody. Just be yourself and continue on.
Right.
That's the best way to go about it. and you see something, say something, because you never know who you're gonna help. But that in particular, that led me to always build about what I see and how I see it, and you won't be able to help if you don't. Mm-hmm. We have certain regulations that we're supposed to build, we're supposed to add on.
Peace, God. Anything you want to add on?
Just peace to all human families of planet Earth, peace to our nation, peace to all human families of planet Earth. Thank you all for everything you do. We produce some of the greatest babies I think the world has ever seen. We just all need to work together as people to uplift them in ourselves.
Peace, God.
Peace, God.
You must do your own research, as I did.
INFMEGA did this.